Malice Mizer. Am I saying that correctly?
Misère.
I used to call him Malice Mizer, and I still know like very few people who actually know this band. They all call him Malice Mizer. And that name just sounds so much cooler and easier to say. Well, I did a poll and they beat Shaquille O'Neal, BTS, and Jay Chou. And here we are. Malice Mizer is one of the classic Visual Kei rock bands, which is kind of a branding of music in Japan that combines elements of visual costumes with rock music. The band lasted from 1992 to 2001, and over those years they went through 3 different singers, one of them being the legendary Japanese musician Gackt. Their main composer is their guitar player named Mana. Koji, the other guitar player, is a secondary composer. Bass player Yuki and drummer Kami also compose for the band, but not very often. Today we'll be reviewing all of their music and grading them with letters, A being a really great song and F being a pointless or terrible song. If I find a song that really blows me away and I really like it, then it gets a gold reward, but those will hopefully be pretty rare. Keep in mind that all of this is my opinion. I'm also a musician as well, so I kind of appreciate and listen to music a little differently than someone who isn't a musician. Also, I'm going to use the English translations of their titles because I just can't speak French, or Japanese, or any other language they use. And I am sorry in advance for any mispronunciations in this video. I know that bothers a lot of people. So, let's get started with their very first album titled Memory. So this is an intro song to their very first album, and it's a solo instrumental, so no vocals. It's a small little tune with just a keyboard piano, and there's something really strange about this one. It sounds like there are 2 tracks of the piano, so it's not like one piano player playing both parts. Someone recorded an ostinato and then recorded themselves playing over it. You can hear both the tracks strike the same note, kind of like interchangeably. And personally, I don't really like this one too much. Apparently they had some trouble writing this one too. They wanted to add more instruments to this, but chose not to. I actually think adding more instruments would have been a good idea. The sample piano doesn't sound too good, it hasn't aged that well, and other instruments could have helped cover the quality of the sound. Also, MIDI was kind of new, and they stated that in this album they actually had trouble with the timing, and you can definitely hear it on this song, like it's completely exposed. Overall, I'm going to give it a D. I think playing this on even a slightly out of tune piano would have been a better choice. It's not terrible, but I've heard a lot better intro songs, especially piano ones. Now we have Memory and Sky. This is track 2, and it's kind of cool going back and listening to some of these early 90s keyboard samples. I really like this song. Key changes and time signature changes are all over this, and it kind of gives you a little taste of what's to come in their real music. Mana claims he never wanted to learn music theory and he doesn't know music theory, but just by hearing this song, and he does have a composer credit, I can tell like he's either bending the truth or an interviewer made that up, or it's just been mistranslated. I can tell that Tetsu's vocals probably aren't for everyone, but I personally like it. I kind of like that punkish sound. And I think in some parts of the song he's overdubbed, singing the same note, and one of the takes is slightly off, so that could bother some people. And you know, this is a time before autotune, and it kind of like makes me feel like a little happy hearing the human singer and the human mistakes. Overall, I give this a B. I would say it's an above average song. Dedicated to the agency or agency. Don't know how to pronounce that word. I've actually heard this song before, but I didn't remember that it was Malice Mizer. And when I first heard of this band, I was afraid all their songs would sound the same, but this one has a completely different feel than the last one. And I can tell that this band likes to play with rhythm a lot, almost like a jazz band. Also, Tetsu's vocals fit this one better, and there's not those weird overdubs that were in the last song. I love the sound quality of this time era, and I honestly think like the early to mid 90s recording style was just really pure. Like it sounds like you're there. I'm going to give this one an A. This one is a great song. Whispers in the Afternoon. This one is track 4, and they're already getting out of their comfort zone. Mana, who's also the composer of this one, he wanted to make a bossa nova song, and I think he pulled it off. Probably because he might know a little music theory. Just teasing. But something you can kind of hear in first albums is the musicians trying to blend together. Usually the vocalist has the hardest time blending, and I think his harsher rock tones didn't fit this style of song too well. Most bossa nova is like really light vocally, and his soft tone and falsetto sounded great within this song. He kind of mixes a lot of different tones, trying to find the right one. Drummer Kami apparently had some trouble playing bossa nova, which I can relate because I have played bossa nova on drums, but I can't really hear him struggling too much on this song. I actually like that he leaves out the bass drum and hi-hat accents in the groove. Kind of makes it sound softer. Sometimes, like, one of my beefs with bossa nova is like there will be like a really soft part of the song, but the drummer hasn't changed the groove. So it's kind of cool to hear that in a song with musicians who don't usually play bossa nova. Overall, I give it a B. It's another above average, and it's nice to have a variety of songs on your album. Enchanted in Rome. Now, this is something you would kind of expect, like if you research this group and you hear about what they play, you would probably expect a song like this. And you can hear some Baroque motifs, and Tetsu's voice sounds like it's home, and it fits the style very well. This is probably his best vocal performance on this album so far. This is also Kami's best work on drums so far as well, and like I said before, this band likes to play with rhythm, and you can hear it here as well. Guitarist and composer Mana is trying to get the sound of a violin from a synthesizer guitar. And to me, it just sounds like a MIDI violin. And I guess you can call that sound a little dated, but it doesn't bother me because, I'm constantly listening to that sample. And he doesn't get too carried away with it, and I think he makes it blend well with the song. And overall, I think this one is like a really good song, and I'm going to give it an A. This song is the only one on the album not written by Mana. It's written by Kochi, who is the other guitar player. And this one is great too. I feel like of all the songs so far, this one blends the best with Tetsu's voice. The amount of compositional music theory stuff that is going on in this song is pretty wild. So if you listen to it a whole bunch of times, you'll probably hear different things that you didn't hear before. And this one also has the most keyboards and synthesizers. Though I don't like the piano sound of this sample because it's kind of dated, they don't get carried away with it, and it kind of blends into the background. There's also a short but sweet guitar lead in this one. So overall, it's a great song, and I give it an A. Alright, Baroque. So I've actually heard this one before as well. Baroque is a song that was not originally on the first album when it was first released, but it was added with the re-release. And this song is a good showcase of the dueling guitar style that Visual Kei is known for. They're using a lot of Bach Baroque motifs in this one as well. The guitars start playing Für Elise halfway through the song, and Für Elise is not Baroque, it's actually classical. And, that's Beethoven. But, despite that, overall, it's the best guitar work on this album, and bass guitar work as well. Tetsu's voice blended pretty well with this one, and I wonder if we'll hear some more Baroque motifs from this band. So if you like Visual Kei and you like that sound that like X Japan makes and all that stuff, this one is a good song, because Malice Mizer is doing that. And overall, I give this one an A. Moving on to their second studio album, Voyage of No Return. Now, we already have a different singer. Tetsu has left the band. And I think most fans of Japanese rock will recognize the new singer. It's Gackt. And in a way, I'm a little disappointed that Tetsu doesn't get another try. I thought we would hear at least one more album with him. I would have liked to see how he evolves with the band's compositions. And you might notice that every time a band gets a new singer, the new singer has a difficult time blending with the band at first. So it's basically like they have to start over from square one, kind of like they were doing with Tetsu in the first album. Not only does the new singer have to blend with the new compositions, but they have to find a way to make old songs work for them as well. And this is because different people have different ranges. And what I'm saying is that getting a new singer for a band is not the same as getting a new guitar player or drummer or, any other instrument. And it's noted that the band took a year off before they released this album. And though it says the band was inactive, I think they were probably using this time to work Gackt into the band and write songs based around his voice. That way you won't hear too much workshop on the actual album. Not only does Gackt have to fill the shoes vocally, but he also became the lyric writer, because the singer of the last album would write the lyrics. So now Gackt is taking that helm. So let's see how this album does. Alright, so we have Beyond Darkness, and so far I haven't really been impressed with these intro tracks. I know there's only been one other one. And really, there's really not much to say about this one. It's just sound effects of wolves and thunder and what sounds like a horse carriage. And I get that it's setting the mood, but it's so short it might as well be part of their next song, which also has the same sound effects in the beginning. Intro songs are kind of hard to rate because most of them are out there, like they're kind of weird. If you want a really good example of good intro tracks, Pink Floyd, as far as Jrock, Duran Gray has a bunch of really good intro tracks. And I feel like with this one, they couldn't decide on whether or not to erase the first 30 seconds of their next song, Transylvania. So this was a compromise. Let's just put it on a different track. And, it makes the album look bigger than it actually is, looking at track-wise. And at that point, I would have just deleted the first 30 seconds, like if you think it's too long. But, this one, the song's kind of pointless, and pointless songs get an F. Like, are you going to say, oh, I really like Beyond Darkness, 30 seconds of sound effects? Moving on. So, we have Transylvania. Gackt has made his debut, and it's a pretty good one. Vocally, his approach is pretty different than Tetsu's, as he'll shoot for lower notes, at least with this song, rather than higher notes. Also, I think it makes the vocals sound more like they're sung by a vampire, because vampires kind of talk in lower register. It also sounds like Mana is moving on from trying to make his guitar sound like a violin, and just hired a violinist. The name of the violinist is Takeshi Kanazawa, and he performed violin for this album. And I think it was a good call because the more complex the violin part becomes, the more fake MIDI starts to sound. Like, you can have sampled violins, but if you make like a really really tricky part, then it starts to show its fakeness. So this violin part was pretty fast, and there's also some horn samples used here, and even timpani samples. And again, Mana makes these parts simple, which is what you kind of have to do with these old samples. And there's even a break where the sound effects take over the song, and yeah. I actually listened to Gackt's original work, and this is something Gackt would take with him from Malice Mizer. The drums were a little quiet, and the reverb on them were, I think, a little too much. You couldn't really hear what was going on with the drums. And the bass guitar was also pretty quiet. But other than that, I think it's a pretty good song. I'll give it a B+. Now we're on to Fragments of Memories, a piece of broken recollection. Okay, so where to begin with this song? When I heard Transylvania, I was a little worried that the album would start putting more emphasis on melody and harmony and start focusing less on the rhythmic side of things, because the drums and bass were just so quiet. But this song took that worry away, and I'm starting to think that Kami might be one of the better drummers in all of Jrock, especially in this era. He just gets really creative with this one. And there's also tempo change and some key changes. And they also reveal Gackt's secret weapon that he brings with him, the piano. Gackt is actually really good at the piano. Compare this piano part to the last albums, and it's completely night and day. It just goes to show that recording the left hand first and then recording the right hand over it will just never sound as natural as recording the two together. This is my favorite song so far. I give it an A+. My only problem with this song is the title. It's just way too long. Just call it Broken Recollection. But you know, this was back in the day when you didn't have to worry about search engines and Spotify algorithms and stuff, so they can really title the song whatever they want. Anyway, A+. This one's really good. First Love, Move Over Utada Hikaru. Malice Mizer did it first. If you look at the genre for this album, you'll see that it's marked as art rock and synth pop. And this is where that synth pop of the album makes an appearance. But even though it's written like a pop song of its era, there are a lot of interesting things happening within the song with its sampled instruments. There's even a MIDI trumpet solo that they do a pretty good job of sequencing, kind of like Led Zeppelin did with All of My Love. This song is not really my taste per se, I think I could say that, but I can recognize like a good composition. And do a challenge for this song, tune out the vocals and just listen to the background instruments, and you'll get an entirely different experience. And the ending of this one really put it over the edge for me. Bossa Nova came back, and with a music box, so this one's really well written, and I give it an A. False Musette. Well, this one is kind of out of left field. So for those who don't know, musette is a French style of music. They're kind of waltzy and they have like a lot of accordion. You probably heard them before. I think this song is an example of what you can get away with when you own your own label. Like I can't imagine being signed to like a big band and then letting them get away with writing something like this. Something I noticed with Malice Mizer is that they kind of put their own twist to a genre rather than just regurgitating it for the sake of it. Like instead of writing, oh, I'm gonna write a bossa nova song, they add their own ideas to that genre. And there are lots of marimba and vibraphone samples used in here, and there's even a counterpoint section between them. There's a female voice in here as well, and she sounds kind of scared when she speaks, and it kind of makes me want to know what she's saying. She's obviously speaking French. And this reminds me a lot of Love Replica by X. Also noted that this one is written by Kochi, who seems to be in about the same tier compositionally as Mana. Like, they're kind of writing at the same level. And Takeshi's violin comes back on this track, and I kind of wish it had a solo or more melody, but when the violin does come out, it's bittersweet. This song gets bonus points for genre bending, and the ending pushes the rating further. Malice Mizer is pretty good at ending songs. A lot of bands have trouble doing that. This one gets an A, and this one is a great song. Okay, no pains, no gains. Now this one is kind of hard to rate for me, and I do like the placement of the song on the album as it's very upbeat. There's other songs like this in Jrock, Buck Ticks, My F Word Valentine, and Dern Gray has a few as well. So that's kind of what I'm comparing this one to. I think the lyrics are a little cheesy, and I even looked up the translation so I can kind of understand the song a bit more because I was kind of having trouble reviewing it. I will say I do like the harpsichord, but at the same time I don't. It seems like they went back to their old way and recorded two harpsichord parts over each other and just did patterns. And the way they're composing it, the notes are kind of hopping over each other, which is something you wouldn't hear in a real harpsichord piece. It would have been really nice to hear a counterpoint here now that I know that Malice Mizer is capable of writing counterpoint. And even though I'm criticizing this song quite a bit, I don't think it's a bad song. It definitely has ideas that it's trying that, normal songs don't. And I think this one actually adds variety to the album in a way, especially with the atonality. But overall, I give this one by itself a C. And I'd actually like to hear them give this type of sound another try. Alright, we have Claire in Search of the Moon. And I have to say, Gackt has been killing it on this album, and this is probably his best performance so far vocally. This one is also another Kochi composition, and he actually wrote the lyrics to this one as well, which is something we don't see too often. It's kind of interesting to see Malice Mizer keep returning to the bossa nova groove. There are also steel drum samples and vibraphone samples in this one as well. And that's the thing about using so many samples and sequencing, you never know what instruments are going to pop up in these songs. And there's also some pretty cool violin samples going on at the end. And I know some people probably can't stand samples and always call them out for sounding fake, but for my taste, so far, I think they've been composed pretty well. People at the time of listening to this probably couldn't tell the difference between the samples they used and real instruments at this time. I'm going to give this one another A. I think this one is another great song. Dang, Malice Mizer, calm down with all these A's. So yeah, this one is going to get another A, and it's so funny because it achieves that grade in a whole different way than the other ones. Takeshi comes out strong with this one on his violin, and surprisingly, I feel like this one is really easy to listen to. Like if you had a friend who doesn't listen to music intensively, this one is a good one to show. Mozart makes an appearance in this one with the Turkish March. Again, that's not Baroque, but this song isn't called Baroque, so it's fine. Gackt is pretty good on this one, and Kami, the drummer, has a good showing on this one as well, so if you're into drums, this one is good. The drums aren't too crazy, but they're well composed. Love the minor fourths at the end of the song, and this one is just a great song. Not only is this next one well written, but it matches with my musical tastes as well. I like the pausing, I like the tempo change, and I love the really wild key changes that you have to be insane to sing correctly. Like, that's some pretty hard stuff to write for Gackt. Interesting thing about this one is that there's no individual composer credit. Kind of curious what made them come to that decision, because this song doesn't sound like something you can just jam out. Like, there has to be like someone deciding where to put all this stuff. And maybe it's a culmination of jam sessions and ideas from everyone. So yeah, I think if you're an intensive listener, this one is really good. I give it an A+. It matches me and my taste pretty well. Now we have Omen, and can you believe the song is only 2 chords? And yeah, this is the first time I hear Malice Mizer sound like they're actually jamming out. There's no vocals on this one, but our boy Gackt is jamming out on the piano. And just listening to this song and reflecting on this album, I've come to realize that Gackt really was their secret weapon. Apologies to Tetsu, but Gackt's piano work, I feel, was something that was really needed for the sound Mana wanted to achieve. There are lots of Sugizo motifs in this one, and I'm not going to knock points off for that. I mean, I'm actually surprised it took this long for any Sugizo motifs to make an appearance, and that's just a Tito So sound. And, honestly, the motif sounds really good over major 7th chords. And if you're looking for a song to zone out to, this one is a very good one. A very good outro to the album, well placed. So I have to give this one an A+. So after listening to this album, I realized that Gackt really was the missing ingredient to Malice Mizer. He brought his piano skills with him, so no more awkward piano overdubs for the most part, and I'm sure we won't see that ever again. And his singing blended well with the band. Throughout this album, I never once felt that Gackt was trying to find himself or trying to blend with his note choices. It was as if he already knew what to do, and I'm sure that they put in the work for the album to sound like that. That's why we got that year of inactivity. Alright, so we have Merveilles. This is their next album, and that translates to Wonders. So I'm going to call it Wonders, because I'm sure I pronounce the French translation completely wrong. I'm a little worried about this album, because it's their first, and apparently their only, that it's being released on a major record label. So this one is not independent like their other albums. And usually when something like this happens, the music composition loses its variety, and the producers try to get the band to have like one sound. Hopefully that doesn't happen here. I mean, we're still in the 90s, so things can get a little experimental even with big labels. Band lineup is still the same, but the personnel has increased because we have more money. We have a cellist, Masage Abe, 2 violinists, Jrock and Bara, and Toshihiro Nakanishi. I've never seen that name before. And we have a sound advisor and a keyboard player, Yohei Shimada. And Yohei is credited as an arranger for a number of tracks. So we did get some producers giving their word into the music. Also noted, this is the band's most successful album sales-wise, because that's what big labels do, advertise you very well. Will the sound producers' input hinder the creativity of the band? Well, let's find out. So, first track of Wonders, and it's their best intro song by far. It sets up the mood, and it has a soft chord progression going over the atmospheric sound effects. Now, it's arguable that they got a little carried away with these sound effects, like the telephone ring kind of sounds out of place with all the outdoor sound effects that are going on. and it makes me a little confused on what the scene is supposed to be. But overall, I would say it's a step up from the last two. I give it a C. And before I show this next song, there's something interesting happening with track 2. So it's the first real song on the album, and it's written by bass player Yuki. Also, this is a pretty important album being tied to a big label, so there's a lot of pressure on this next song. Let's see how Yuki's compositional style differs from Mana and Kochi. Alright, so this one delivered for sure. This song has an epicness to it, and I can see why they placed it this early on the album. So Yuki does something interesting towards the middle of the song. He does what I call a fake ending. The music stops and the sound effects from the intro take over and the song gets a bit softer. Also, this is the first time we're hearing updated samples, and they do sound way better than previous albums. So that means all the fake instruments sound a lot more real. And oddly on this album, all members of the band are actually given programming credits. And I feel like with this song at least, there's a mixture of real instruments and samples going on like everywhere. And it's kind of hard to tell which are real, which have effects, and all that stuff. So I think it's a great song. Overall, I give it an A, and sadly, it's the only one Yuki is credited to on this album. Alright, so this one sounds like Kami's drum set is either bigger on this one or he's utilizing more tricks. You can definitely hear it in this song. You hear splash cymbals, and overall I think it's just a really well composed drum part. So if you like drums, you'll like this one. I also like the reverse tracking on this one, but there is something I didn't like about this song, and shocking. It's the fade outs. So there are times in the song where there are silences, and for some reason the editor decided to fade the instruments out briefly instead of letting the feedback play. And a lot of producers do this to get rid of the feedback on the guitars, because when the silence happens, they want complete silence. They don't want that feedback. But personally, I just let the feedback continue, because you can really hear the fade outs, and it's just kind of like you wouldn't hear that in a live show. You would hear the feedback. But other than that, it's a pretty good song, and I'm going to give it a B+. Now, I know this one is a really well-liked song, so don't hate me for rating it lower than the last one. A B+ is still really good. Alright, so we have Illuminati. So this one, I know this one probably really isn't for everyone, but it's kind of in that strange style that No Pains, No Gains was in. And I think this one is done a whole lot better. Actually reminds me a little bit of Yuzo Koshiro's work. And if you don't know who that is, I did a video on him. And I actually started imagining a wild Streets of Rage stage as this was playing, and it kind of took me out of my analyze mode, which is not easy to do. So we're starting to hear more sound effects, or more effects on the instruments in general. Also, something I noticed just now, it's a little hard to hear the bass guitar on many of these songs, like even on their previous albums. You really have to listen to it to hear these bass lines. And I think the bass comes out a little bit more on this song. Overall, I think this is a good song. I would even challenge that maybe easy listeners might like this one on the second or third play. For me, it gets an A. Also, this one is written by Kochi, and I'm starting to really appreciate how out there he gets with his compositions. Also, really great drum work done on this one. Up next we have Brise. I believe that's what it is. This one is another great song by Kochi. Why the hell is Malice Mizer so good at writing easygoing pop songs? It's like really bizarre. It's like you tell Dream Theater to write a pop song, I bet they come up with something good. And Malice Mizer, you know, it's kind of like the same idea. And I'm actually really surprised that this one wasn't released as a single. I love the low overdubs and the vocals. The drum part is really good. Love the effects on the drums. Like, it was like an explosion at one part. And I kind of want to show my drummer Anthony this song to show him just how cool sound effects can make a drum part, because I can tell he really hates when I put sound effects on his drums. There's also a really short xylophone part in here, followed by a comedic sound effect. Yes, so if you have a friend that likes easygoing songs, I think this one is definitely at the top of my list to show easy listeners. This one is likely an underrated song by them. I'm not really totally sure about that, but I really love it. I give it an A+. Alright, so we got Gone with the Wind, and I swear I've heard this one before. I think the guitar work in this one put it over to the A rank, because I'm going to give it an A. Now, don't get mad when I say this, but the guitar work was like U2 meets classical guitar, and, you know, I like U2, especially their guitar work. So that blend was just really cool to hear. And I love that their guitar melodies aren't shredding fast, like you can hear the beauty of their note choices in this one. Sometimes with bands, the guitar is going really, really fast to kind of like, I call it like kind of showing off. But, you know, sometimes slow melodies sound really good on guitar. This one, Gackt's singing is really great. I love his falsetto. And the drums, as always, are amazing as well. The ending sounds are the icing on the cake. Like, man, it's just, this one's really good. So we had like 3 A's in a row. So this album is sounding pretty good. Alright, au revoir. Oh, I can't pronounce that word, but I know what it means. It means goodbye. And now this one was like a really, really good song. Hard to explain what I just heard. So, where to begin? So first off, this feels like a part 2 of Gone with the Wind. And they're kind of similar, and they just kind of go well together. Like, this one is the sequel. So, really good album placement. I'm sure they did that on purpose. Drums were kick-ass as usual, and the real violin gave this song a really beautiful sound. Now, this might be Gackt's best vocal performance so far, and like Illuminati, the song took me away from analyze mode, and because of that, I think this one is kind of a step above the A's that are on this album, so I'm gonna have to give it a gold. Now, on top of all this, I swear I've heard this song before as well, and I don't remember where or when I heard this song. So yeah, this one gets the gold. Definitely check it out. Intensive listeners, easy listeners. I think this one can please just about anyone. Up next we have Je te veux, or believe that means I want you. Kochi, who the hell are you on this album? You are a madman. So mix Malice Mizer with Yuzo Koshiro, and mix that with 1980s dance, and you mix that with techno, and yes, we're still classical sounding motifs, and yeah, you get this song. There's a chromatic scale just going up and down in your right ear. And yeah, this one sounds like the pinnacle of synth pop, like just like the ideas in this song, and the fact that it came out of left field, like it sounds totally different from everything previously. It just caught me completely off guard. And you know, listen to this one with headphones, like for sure. And I know it's kind of weird, I'm going to give this one the gold too. Now, some of you all might disagree with that, but I didn't think this song would be able to follow the last one, and it sure as hell did. Great work by Kochi. Just the ideas in this album so far. It's clear that there was no hindrance like I thought there would be. Alright, so up next we got S Conscience. So this song is not for everyone. In fact, it might not be for me unless I'm like in a real angry mood. I actually might put it on my workout playlist. You know, I don't know. Apparently fans don't like this one too much. I can see why. On the album placement, it's kind of hard to follow the last two. But I think there's some interesting ideas in this one. The vocal style is something I haven't heard from Gackt yet with Malice Mizer, and I think it fits it well. It's kind of a harsher toned song, and honestly I like Illuminati more, but this one is also good too. I'm gonna give it a C+. Alright, this next one. Now this one was really hyped. It's credited to launching Gackt's solo career. And, you know, a lot of fans say it's their favorite song. But personally, I just don't really know like how I feel about this song. In my honest opinion. I know I'm going to get some dislikes for not liking this song. To me, it just sounds like a lesser version of In Silence by Lunacy. And also, worthy to note, Gackt composed this one as well. This is his first song he's composed with Malice Mizer. So basically, he's shifted the guitar riff a little bit, and as a result, it just sounds like a lesser version of In Silence, like that riff. I mean, it's basically the same riff that's shifted, so it won't sound exactly the same. And you see this kind of thing done with like Nickelback. Nickelback does this stuff, and Coldplay does this stuff. Sometimes they're their own songs. As a result, the guitar riff just sounds awkward to me. And that's one of the things that happens when you try to slightly change something, so it won't sound exactly the same as something else. Like, it just comes off, I don't know, it just comes off weird. And I feel like they agreed, because on the music video version of this exact song, like, those guitar riffs are like gone, from what I heard. And I like that version better, but I'm not rating that version. I'm rating this one. And this one did not live up to the hype for me, honestly. It's really hard for me to believe that this is their most successful song. I feel like this might be one of the weaker songs I've heard from them. And honestly, it gets a D for me. I know. I'm sorry. Okay, Nocturne in the Moonlight. So Kochi pushes out another classic. Now, this is the Malice Mizer we all know and love. Good placement on the album too, and I believe that it's the last song before the outro song. Now, if you want a song to define what the band stands for, I think this one might be the best one to do it. So it's great. Great vocals on Gackt, all around solid song, solid composition. Love the ending. Really good ending. Gets an A+ for me. Alright, Forest of Wonders. I love the key change in here. This one was a lot better than I was expecting. Now, this is a closer, which is something we never got in the previous albums. There's timpani samples and great instrumentation. and it probably ranks up there with Pigs on the Wing as far as like my favorite outro songs. I just love them. And it's really apparent that Malice Mizer knows how to end songs and end albums. I'm going to give this one a B+. Alright, so overall, I think this is a great album. Now, did we see some big label shenanigans? It is possible that a sound producer listened to In Silence, really liked that guitar riff, and wanted Malice Mizer to put it in one of their songs. That kind of thing happens. Now, it does sadden me that that song is their most successful song, even when compared to all their other songs. But it's not because it sounds like In Silence. Like, that doesn't bother me. I just feel like their other songs were way better than that one. Maybe there's like a sexiness to Lucille, but I don't know. I can't detect that. But yeah, I really liked the gold songs on this album. Really blew me away. So great album overall. So big label album did very well, and Malice Mizer was the most successful it had ever been. Gackt thought it was the perfect time to leave the band and pursue a solo career. Now, honestly, I really don't know how to feel about that. And to make matters worse, one of the greatest drummers of all Jrock, Kami, passed away. And I think this is why some people don't like Gackt. I mean, it's kind of a dick move what he did. And I remember there being like hate communities for Gackt. And you know what? I kind of want to go back and look at those forums. Okay, moving on. So, what we actually get from this little EP are songs written by Kami. Apparently Kami had garnered an interest in composing and would even practice guitar. Also worth noting, Kochi and Mana have apparently not been keeping up with their practice of guitar, according to legend. So band morale is extremely low. We've lost 2 members of the band, and there's no drummer credited on this album, so I'm guessing we won't hear much drums. Personnel is quite small. We have Hitoshi Kono on the violin, and of course Kami, who is credited to being an eternal blood relative and main composer for this album. Alright, so first up we had Reunion. Dang, it sounded like a requiem. Really good introduction, and knowing the story and the band's sadness, you can hear that pain. My goodness, like, it came close to making me cry. And, you know, I have a feeling like listening to the next songs, I'm gonna feel something like that I've never felt. So I'm gonna give this one an A. I think it's a really solid composition, and really emotional, so good work there. Meeting with Fate. So my god, I don't have words. Just hearing no drums and no Gackt, and the name of the piece, like the name of the song, Meeting with Fate, like geez. The quiet talking, some people speculate to be Mana. And though it's written by Kami, Mana and Malice Mizer still have to produce it, so you can tell a lot of their sadness is entering this one. And man, like honestly, just knowing, like, hearing how talented Kami was, and like knowing like he's gone from this journey, it's pretty sad. So we have Angels in the Woods. This one is a little bit more uplifting. By a little, I mean a lot. For drums, we have samples. And honestly, to me, it just sounds like the song is unfinished, or like this one is a demo. Probably at this point, they don't have a singer. and I believe there was a vocal part that was just played on an instrument. Like it sounded like an instrument is playing like a vocal part, so it, like kind of just doesn't fit. And like this is something I would make to like give a band an idea of what a song would sound like, and we'd work on it, you know. But they're doing what they can, and even with that said, it's not a bad song. Do they ever bring this one back with a singer? You know, I don't know. For some reason, I'm just thinking like, you know, could they have like brought back Gackt for like one song, come back to sing one more time? And you know, that's where it gets like, you know, do people hate Gackt because he didn't come back for like this one album? I don't know. According to the forums, that wasn't the case. But yeah, overall, I think I'm just gonna give this one a C. I think that's probably the best rate I could give it, because it really needs a vocal part, really needs, you know, drums. But you know, it's a nice song. It just feels like more can be done with it. Alright, so this translates to Church of Roses, and this is their final album. We have a different singer and a different drummer. Mana, Kochi, and Yuki are back to reprise their instruments. Shu will be covering the drums, and Kalaha, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he is kind of like the main singer of this album. We also have additional vocalists, Maki Okada and Yuko Taki, and they are also covering vocals. Ryuichiro Goto is covering string instruments, and yeah, I'm a little worried. No one is credited for keyboards or piano, so I'm thinking if we do hear any piano, it'll be probably sampled. It's also worth noting that Kami is still on the personnel as Eternal Blood Relative. And also, Mana, Kochi, and Yuki are credited with Drum Machine, which means we're likely going to hear many drum samples also. This album apparently sounds very different from their other work, and some fans actually stopped listening to Malice Mizer at this point. But it looks like that they'll still be mixing some genres. Well, let's hurry up and get into this one. And sadly, just looking at the composer credits, we do not get another Yuki composition, as all songs but 2 are written by Mana. And yeah, and there's also no lyric credits, at least on Wikipedia. Well, let's get right into this one anyway. Okay, so we have this first one, a prelude of Malice and Misery, painted by the Rose. Very long name, but here we've reverted to the problem they had with Beyond Darkness. And this one is a very nicely played organ part that sets the mood very well, and it actually sounds like it's being hand played. Who knows, maybe it's sequenced and it's just really well sequenced. And honestly, that might be the problem I have with this one, because the next song is basically just a continuation of this organ part in the same key. Now, I'll give this intro song some points for being like really musical and interesting, but I feel like it should have just been included in their second track. The next track seems to be pretty grand. It's a pretty long song, so I don't think 30 minutes would offset it in any way, and I think it would actually benefit. So yeah, I feel like this is another pointless intro. It's well played, but it should just really be on track 2. Most people who will listen to track 2 won't get this intro because it's separated. Anyways, I'm going to give this one a D-. Holy Time, Eternal Prayer. Alright, so I think this is their really first big song. I think this is the longest song we've heard from them. And what they've done here is essentially written a prayer. And mad props to Mana, who has grown as a composer at this point. And there's a whole lot going on in this song. There's 2 singers, male and female. There's strings and organ music. It's hard to really even notice guitar at all. And it still has a rock feel at some points. But one thing that kind of bugs me as a whole with Malice Mizer, and I've mentioned this before, it's their bass guitar mix. I feel like the bass part in this one is really good, but I think the listener has to work a little too hard to listen for it. And you know, it could be my recordings or whatnot, maybe my headphones, but yeah, I still think, you know, it's quieter than it should be. Also, when things get really busy with this song, some instruments kind of get drowned out with each other. But aside from that, it has a lot of interesting ideas, and it still gets an above average for me. So I'll give this one a B. Next one, amusement in nihilism. I'm not really sure how to pronounce this. I think that word means like the absence of religion or something like that. And with this one, Mana has gone mad. And you know, there's a ton of musicians today that blend genres and they get really creative with music theory. And I'm not gonna like expose who these are, but it's a lot of YouTube musicians. They'll explain what they're doing, they'll explain this giant chord they've created, they'll do all these harmony things, and then they'll just call the song like Yummy Cheese or, you know, something. Basically, like, they'll just do the music theory for the sake of music theory. And this song here epitomizes how you can make blending genres and how you can make all those crazy harmonies and all that stuff actually mean something. And this song is not about blending genres. This song is not about counterpoint or the harmonies within it. This song has character. And you can listen to the piano part in this one, and you can attach the word amusement to the piano part. And I can't really explain this one too much, but there was this female opera voice duo that was just breathtaking. And also, who is this singing on the track? There's not really anyone credited here. Maybe I'm just not looking hard enough. But yeah, I think this song gets the gold. Maybe it's not for everyone, but if you're an intensive listener, then I think it is your duty to hear this one. This one might actually be my favorite Malice Mizer song so far. Alright, next up we have Mirror Dance, Night of Bewitchment, and this one is a Kochi composition. And it's pretty good, but it's another one that's likely not for everyone. I like the ideas in it. There's this French motif it uses. Love Replica also uses the same motif, and I don't know the origins of the motif. I've heard it in other French music as well. And you can actually hear the bass guitar part in this one, but now the drums are noticeably quiet in this one, which is a bit of a shame because it sounds like they're doing some interesting things. And I'm starting to notice that I'm having more of an issue with the mixing of this album than all of the others. It might be because they're adding way more instruments than they ever had, and you know, this many instruments with rock is just not common. And there's a main vocal part in this one sung by Klaha, and I think it's a solid performance. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Kamijo. Top rate composition by Kochi, but I think it could have been mixed better. It still gets a B+ from me though. Alright, Promises Exchanged at Midnight. So this is a great performance by Klaha, and I get that he might not be as quote-unquote good as Gackt, like maybe he doesn't like sing a big range like Gackt does. But you have to understand that Malice Mizer really knew how to write for Gackt, and they blended for a while. They took that whole year. I think with this song, they tried to go for Gackt, for a Gackt-like ballad, and I think it's good. And I think my main beef with this one is the lack of a drum part, really. maybe I miss Kami and I miss what he brings to the table, and maybe they're doing it out of respect, but I'm really starting to, miss the experimentation. The drums here are sampled and there's some splash cymbal stuff going on, but yeah, and just the song as a whole kind of dragged on a little bit. It still has a unique atmosphere, so it's not like totally average as a song. So overall, I think I give this song a C+. Alright, so now we have Bloodstained Fruit, and this one is pretty good. And it's another one that I wish we had some real drums playing, and a real drummer playing here. I know they're experimenting here with heavy drum samples, and it does sound pretty good. But aside from that, this is a pretty solid song. We get to hear more emphasis on this new lead singer, and we get to hear a bit more of his style, which I feel is quite different than Gackt and Tetsu. I feel like this one is the most easy listening song out of the ones we've heard so far, but even then it's still kind of really dark, so maybe people who don't like the dark sound wouldn't like it. I give this one a solid B. It's a pretty good song. Alright, now we have Labyrinth of Underground Rivers, and this one is another amazing song composed by Kochi. And I really like the way they set their album up. Like, there'll be a line of Mana-composed songs, and then Kochi will come out with something that sounds completely different, and I think that's really cool. I love how exposed the bass guitar is on this one. You can actually hear the part, and it's a pretty good part. Musically, the MVP on this one is Yukoi Takai, I believe. I'm trying my best on pronouncing that. She has taken over the vocals on this one, and yeah, it's a really good vocal part. I love the intro, and I like how the instruments in the intro appear to be like a little bit off of each other. Like they're not sounding together, and it's done on purpose. And this musical idea even comes back later in the song. This is another song that uses pretty fancy music theory techniques to paint a picture. And the word I was thinking of when I heard this song was the word lost. And if you look at the title, it's talking about a labyrinth of rivers. And there you go. That's the word. I think it fits perfectly. And you don't even have to look up lyrics or facts to get the story of this song. You can just kind of hear it with the composition and the title. Amazing song. This one gets the gold for sure. Blasphemy Culmination. So it took 9 tracks for us to finally get an idea of what drummer Shu was going to bring to the table. Rhythmically, it's the most interesting song on the album so far, but not because of the drums. It's because of the tuplets with the choir and the other instruments. This one does have more of a rock feel than the other songs, and I feel like listeners who weren't fans of most of the songs on this album so far are likely relieved when they get here, because this one feels like the same style they would write. Personally, I was hoping for something more interesting on the drums, but that's just a personal thing. The atonal music box is very beautiful in this song, and I still think this one is a top tier song, so I'm gonna give this one an A+. Alright, so now we have Rondo of Love and Sadness, Driven Mad by the White Skin. And this one actually sounds like a Versailles song. Now, of course, that band came out way later than Malice Mizer, and I know that Versailles was heavily inspired by Malice Mizer. And the vocal style of Klaha is more similar to Kamijo than to Gackt's, and like with Versailles, it blends perfectly here. Also with this one, you can hear the difference between the two bands very well. Versailles is faster, but Malice Mizer experiments more with rhythm, and lets the melody of the guitar, I think, breathe a little more. It's not as fast. And now look at that song title. Like, do any bands write songs with titles that long anymore? I guess this was before, of course this was before like Spotify and stuff. And you know, before anyone gets triggered by the title, white skin refers to vampire, I'm pretty sure. Overall, I think this is a good song, very reminiscent of their older work, and I think this one would likely be listened to by Versailles countless times. So I'm going to give this one an A+. Alright, so now we got the Blood and Rose of Reunion. This is the final song on the album, and it sounds like their opener on the previous EP, Shinwa or Kami. And this one is even more depressing and even more dark and even more emotional. You can really hear the sadness in it. The only thing I don't like about this song is where it's placed on the album. I felt like this one should have been the opener. And, you know, I think the ending of the last song would have left listeners in higher spirits. And also, I feel like this one, without words, explains the situation that the band was in. And, you know, it's just like the opener of the last album, this one has a time capsule of an emotion. Yeah, I felt like this one kind of sets the stage for the album. I just think it should be in the beginning. But aside from that, rating it as a song itself, I give it an A+. It's a really good song. And that ends their final album, and I actually thought this album would be worse. But losing Gackt and losing Kami obviously forced Mana and Kochi to get really creative with the composition. Funny enough, I think losing Kami actually affected this album more so than losing Gackt. Maybe that's because I'm a little biased and a little bit more of a drummer, and I felt like the singers on this one did really well. I felt like many of the best songs here did have the female singers and that higher register of singing, and I felt like that type of singing really blended well with the music. The new lead singer also did a superb job. Now, he is very different from Gackt, but I still like his style a lot. Now, most of the composition style here was uncharted waters, and there was a lot of experimentation. And I'd like to say that in their next album, they refined this style and learned how to mix it better and took more chances. But, you know, this is where their album making ends. This is where it all stopped. Alright, going into overtime, it's time to listen to the singles. And I feel like if I miss a song, this is where it's gonna be. Bands release little singles all the time, and it's tough to keep track of them. Sometimes the releases are limited or only for a special time. Sometimes they're part of another album. And with this section, I'm going to avoid songs that are also on their studio album. So singles that are from the albums I won't review again. And I'm also going to avoid instrumentals and different versions of the same song. Reason being would be that it's extremely hard to rate different versions of songs for me. So with all that out of the way, let's get into their singles. So this song was apparently the first Malice Mizer song to actually feature Gackt, according to what I'm seeing here, and you can kind of tell. This was likely a test song to prepare for their first album with him. And I think with this song, I actually hear a little bit of that blending I was talking about with first albums and new singers. But even then, it's still a pretty good song, and I feel that some of the mixing might be a little less quality than some of their other songs. But, you know, it's still a solid song. There's also, like, female voices in this one that kind of jumped out at me. But yeah, nothing really caught me off guard or made me like excited with this one, but I still would say it's above average for sure. I'm gonna give this one a C+. Alright, so next one, après-midi. I don't know how to pronounce that word. But this one was a lot better than I was expecting. And I have to admit, this one was a little hard to find. This one is super refreshing because Kami is back on drums. And this drum part and this bass guitar part really did not disappoint. It's an easy listening song, and like their other easy listening songs, it's really well done. I give this one a solid A. This one is a great song. And we have Machere, another French title, and you know, with this one, Kami just kills it. He always kills it on these types of songs. I really like what he does with the splash cymbals, and overall the drum part is extremely well composed. Apparently the story for this one is that Tetsu, the singer on their first album, wrote lyrics but left before the song could be finished. Gackt would end up singing the part, so if this story is true, this is Gackt singing something that was written for another singer, which is not easy to do. Now, of course, this entire story could be bull, but if it's true, that means that the singers may not always be writing the melodies, which is kind of interesting. I give this one a B+. This one is pretty good. Color Me Blood Red, and I think my only critique of this one is that it's just too short. I felt like I wanted it to do more things, but they just like cut it off. And something this song made me notice was that though the drums are programmed, the part is still quite interesting, and it reminds me of something Kami would write. So maybe he did do some drum programming. I mean, he was credited with programming sometimes. And I know I'm gushing over this drummer, but I mean, come on, he's pretty darn good at what he does. However, this song is kind of average for me as a whole. The backup vocal overdubs are a little cheesy, and like I said, you know, it's kind of a little too short. I would give this one just an average. It's not bad, but yeah, it's just kind of there. So we have Prologue, and this is a prologue to a bigger song titled Gardenia, which many Malice Mizer fans hold in high regard. And like I said before, these intro songs are kind of hit or miss for me. And I think their idea of what an intro song should be kind of clashes with what I think they should be. But I think their idea works a little better here because this is a single rather than a big album. But I swear they've kind of used this chord progression a lot, and Versailles kind of uses it a lot too. And you know, maybe they're using it as a calling card. But yeah, I feel it's another intro that could just be the first 30 seconds to Gardenia. Hard to rate. I guess I'll give it a C-. I'll give it some points for their idea kind of working better with the song. Alright, so this one is Post-Gackt and Post-Kami. So this is after they have left and after Kami has passed. This is Gardenia, and I believe Shu may have performed drums on this one. And this song definitely lets him breathe compared to the final album of Malice Mizer. Also, Kalaha, again, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's on vocals, and I love the piano part, even though it's MIDI and probably not performed. I think if it were performed by a pianist, it could have added a lot more to it, because if you play things on piano, you can phrase it, and you can program phrasing too. It's just really hard. I still think this is a great Malice Mizer song, and it's an easy listening one as well. Something they probably want to get like on the radio or something. And that's something we didn't have like totally with this singer. I feel like this is the easiest listening song with this singer. Overall, I give it about an A-. I think it's pretty good. Alright, so this is a track that is also featured on the Gardenia single, and this little tune was hard to find. Had to go to Japanese music subs on YouTube. This one sounds like a Kochi song, but it's hard to find some credits or personnel on these singles. This one is another electronic song, and to some listeners it can get kind of repetitive. And I'm not going to knock it for being repetitive, because I feel like that's what it's trying to do. There's some backtracking going on and some cool organ stuff in here too. The vocals talked rather than sung, which was pretty interesting. And honestly, I don't really know how I like this one taste-wise. I don't know if it matches my taste of this kind of music. I feel like they've done more creative things with this mix of genres. Like, I feel like they've attempted this and have been more successful. But I feel like this one is not just slapped together lazily. I still consider it kind of above average. I'm going to give it a C+. Those creeps are nice, strange creeping into darkness. Madness starting to wake barefoot on you. Alright, now we got the Beast of Blood. So if you're a metalhead, I think this one is for you. I'm not really a metalhead, but thanks to Versailles and X, you can kind of expect motifs of metal to appear in Jrock. And I actually like that it hasn't been there all that much with Malice Mizer, but it's here in this song. So if you really like that in your Jrock, it's Malice Mizer has that as well. Whomever's on the drums, I'm assuming it's Shu. They did a pretty good job with this one, as they finally let him breathe some more. I'm actually enjoying listening to his drum work. The guitar effects on this one were pretty cool too. Bass was a little too quiet for my taste yet again, but I give this song points for being very different than the other songs that I've heard. Yeah, so I'm going to give this one a B. Alright, so we have Baptism of Blood, and hey, it's that synth motif I use. Now, I believe I got this motif from Pink Floyd. You can hear it in, like, I think their song Run Like Hell, that their drummer actually wrote. And I personally love that motif, so it gets personal points there. With that said, I can kind of agree with fans that this one is not for everyone. And compared to Beast of Blood, this one kind of gets lost on many of the fans. And this one was, again, it was kind of hard to find. Some people would rate it lower, but I'm going to give it a C+ again. I still feel like it's not another slap together. Like they didn't just like put something together to add to the single. They actually kind of worked on this. Yeah, so I'm going to give this one a C+. Alright, so this next one is a hidden track on the Beast of Blood single, and I have to admit that I almost missed it. According to legend and this comment, this is actually an unfinished Kami composition, and that's something I was speculating it to be. Because when I heard this one, it gave me that same emptiness that I noticed with some of the other songs on that EP. This one also kind of reminds me more of more modern soundtrack music where they overlay ostinatos over one another, something a lot of composers are obsessed with in this day and age. I love the chord progression and how emotional the supporting instruments are. The programmed drums are well composed as well, and I think it's actually my favorite song on the Beast of Blood single. And it's a happy surprise that we have another Kami composition this late in the game. And now we're going to move on to their final single. Okay, so we have Garnier, Kindan no Sono. Hopefully I've come close on that one. The drum work here is great, so I'm really kind of confused. I'm really like, is Shu doing the drums on this one? Because they never like list them as part of the band, or is it like another drummer? Even though this is not Kami, I feel like this is one of the most well composed drum parts that I've heard from Malice Mizer, so it ranks up there with Kami's work. I like how it randomly breaks into bossa nova for just like one measure. Like the drums will be playing some other style, and then boom, bossa nova, and then back. So that's something I've never never heard that before, and that I feel like that's something Kami would do. If this is Shu, then Shu is very versatile. As for the song, I feel like this one is their most Jrock sounding song, if you consider that like a sound. And maybe they were going for that easy listening style that was around at the time, because I feel like that style is starting to emerge in this time. I think that they do this style pretty well. Vocals are really good, bass is louder than usual, and it has a good part. So if you've been kind of mad at their bass parts, this song kind of like clarifies that. This is a song that I think most people would like, and I think I'm going to give it an A. And what gives it an A is that they didn't separate the first 30 seconds of the song. Like, if you listen to the first 30 seconds, you kind of feel like, hey, this is kind of like the intros they make, but they put it with the song. So I really like that. And I know I'm being like really nitpicky with that, but with a band this good, you kind of have to find things to complain about. So yeah, this one is a well-composed, easy listening song. Yeah, this one is another one I think metal people would enjoy, and I think it's a complete 180 from what Versailles does with this type of music, even though like you think, pleasing metalheads, it would sound kind of the same. There is a whole lot in this one. The bass guitar part is pretty good and even gets exposed, and I really like when bands like say, hey, here's what our bass guitar player is doing. It's almost like they can hear me critique the quietness of the bass, so the bass has been turned up on these last few songs. Yeah, the drum part is really good, and again, showcases versatility. There's some atonality, which means like notes sound quote-unquote bad on purpose. That is within the synth strings, and this song just has a great use of sound effects. So they're ending this journey strong, I would say, with this one, because this is a really, I think it's a top tier song. There's really nothing that bothered me, and there's really nothing I can critique with this one. And this is a song I can go back to. Maybe I am a metalhead, because I'm going to give this one the gold. Definitely one I could go back to, and if you're an easy listener who wants to be an intensive listener, I think this song can actually get you there. I think it's a good one to listen to over and over and start thinking about different things you hear every time you listen to it. Very good, nice work, and you're ending with the gold. I think that's probably the best ending we're going to see if I continue doing these full song reviews. So there you have it, all Malice Mizer songs reviewed. So what do I think about the band overall? Well, I think if I continue doing this band is going to be really hard to top. I mean, just look at the statistics here. So most of their songs were around the A, B letters, but we got 6 gold songs. And, I've listened to all bands' music. I kind of do this thing a lot, just kind of on my own. And it's kind of rare for me to find so many songs that blow me away. we didn't really see that many songs that were below average, and the ones that we did see were mostly intro songs and, you know, stuff that just could have been part of other songs. I honestly think I can take a lot from them as a composer myself, and I honestly believe when it comes to older school Jrock, I'm just gonna say it now, Kami is probably the best drummer I've heard in that realm. And heck, he may be one of the most creative rock drummers I've ever heard. He really plays to my tastes. And yeah, I even think, like, apparently his mentor was Sakura from Larkansville, and I think he's a far superior drummer. The band's musical ideas were really out there, and it's clear that Versailles seemed to take that genre and kind of let Malice Mizer's legacy live on in that way. Also, not sure if this is true, but the singer of Versailles was actually a roadie for Malice Mizer, and that's pretty cool. And he even sang for Malice Mizer at some point. And it's also nice to know that Mana still has a performing act, so if I want to continue his music journey, I can go do that. There's also a whole lot more to this band. I didn't even talk about the lyrics. The stories within them, and they do a lot of theatrics, and they even have feature films listed here. Personally, I've never liked the visual aspect of Visual K, and I kind of wish the style of music wasn't called Visual K, because that's the word visual, because there's some really good music being composed in that realm of Japanese rock. And I think the whole visual aspect kind of distracts from how good the music actually is, and you get a lot of fans that kind of dehumanize the artist. Like, I mean, just look at Gackt's hate page. But if you're into that kind of visual stuff, then there's a whole lot of it on YouTube, and there's a whole lot of DVDs. Overall, I think I'm going to give this band an A+. This band lined up with my tastes probably perfectly. And if you're a fan of the genre-bending musicians and experimentations that great musicians do, then this is the band for you. And yeah, so the title of this video is called Every Song Reviewed. So if I missed a song, please leave it in the comments, and I will listen to it and review it right there in the comments section. Bands release things. Sometimes you'll get like a cassette player at a car wash, you know, some random sale like that. And yeah, so if I left out any song, just leave it in the comments and I'll review it. Also, listen to Phoenix Splash's new singles Guilt and Corona Queen. They should be in all stores. And of course, they're also on YouTube as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. This was definitely a really fun band to get into. And I hope you've enjoyed this little retrospective. Anyways guys, this is Josh the Music Man, signing off.